Hey there. I want to take just a few moments and walk you through something I think is very interesting. This is a project that I did for a class I'm taking, 513 Data Analytics. And what I have looked at and what I want to share with you are the findings from this study I did. So, what I looked at is per county new cases of COVID-19. And I did a comparison of counties that have a public university in them and counties that do not, and compared them to the time frame before they opened back up to students and after they opened back up to students. And I think this is kind of an important question. Universities generally make this decision to reopen by themselves without community input, unless and it's a business decision. I get that angle of it. But if you're having an effect on the surrounding community, um, maybe it's not a great idea to be making that decision by yourself. You should involve the community. And that, I think that's pretty rare, unless a community member just happens to be sitting on the board of regents of a particular school. I think that would be a pretty rare occurrence. So to do this, I had to go back through the Kentucky COVID pages, all the new case data by county. They started doing that on June 1st. And so, and they reported in PDF, which is not a great format to access. But so I took the time to get all of that data and put it into an Excel file. Okay, it took a little work, but I used Mathematica to kind of read the text and do things like that. And I did this through October 9th, which is when my project was basically due. So that took a bit of time to do that. And then I had to kind of decide what to measure here in order to kind of equalize the different sizes, right? I don't want to do just raw new cases because 200 new cases in Jefferson County is not the same as 200 new cases in Greene County, for example. The population is much less. So what I opted to do here, and there's things you could look at, there's RT rates and things like that you can calculate, but I decided to keep it simple and just look at new cases per 1,000 population. So that's what you'll see here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you kind of what this looks like. And let me go into presentation mode so you can see it here. So this is the new case data from, and I'll go back to from June 1st per county per 1,000 population. So on June 1st, there was a pretty decent amount of cases picked up in Allen County, for example. And then this changes over time. And then as I got to October 9th, you could tell things were getting a little bit hotter. It'd be curious to see what's happened through October. And I may go back just out of curiosity and feed that data in as well, because right now our new cases are going through the roof in Kentucky. So, and this is one of the things you can do in Tableau. It's really a nice visual software for visualization of data, things like that. What drove me to kind of look at this was if I'm looking at these are counties that are non-college counties, okay, accumulated together, and then these are counties that have a public university in them. So the green is. And so if I look at the trend line over the entire time frame here, we see that it appears to be trending up. So my methodology here is I'm going to actually split this data into two sections, and I'll do this in just a second. But I want to look at what happens before they open and then a week after the schools open in each of the individual counties. And I'll take them in the order of the ratio of their schools enrollment to the population of the county. So the least likely, or the most likely to be affected, is Grant County, which houses NKU. But Grant County is actually doing great. Green is the Grant County curve, and this is the rest of the state. So Grant County is doing fantastic through this. Rowan County has Moorhead. They appear to be about the same. However, when we decouple this stuff before they open and after they open, this large peak after they open may have a bit of effect on the results there. Callaway County has Murray. This green curve does appear to be growing in this case. We'll see what happens when we uncouple these things. Madison appears to be growing. Warren County seems to be holding steady through all this, but we'll see. There is a large peak here when I uncouple things. We'll see what happens. Fayette County. Sorry, this kind of stuff is in my way. I'll move it up here. Fayette County definitely had, it looks like a growth here, so we'll see. And then Franklin houses KSU. They appear to be holding pretty well. And then Jefferson County has U of L, and they are growing a little bit. It remains to be seen what happens when we uncouple these and see about the growth. So, so here's my methodology on this. I'm treating the student populations as a separate population. I'm not adding that in with the counties. And maybe I could do that. We'll see what happens. I may do that as well in the future and just see what happens. But really, I'm just looking at the county populations, and I'm going to like here, I will take a data set from before when they opened, which was August 17th. That's when U of L opened, and then a week after they opened, I'll have a second data set. So there's a mean of the differences between these data points over here, and there's a mean of the differences, the data points over here. And so what I'd like to do is compare those means. And the null hypothesis here will be that this mean is greater than or equal to this mean. And then we'll look and see, I'm going to set a significance level of 5%. We'll look and see if I can reject that null hypothesis. Okay, if that's just statistically too different, then I would reject that null hypothesis and say, no, this is definitely bigger over here. Okay, it's important to note that this is not causality, and that's a big portion of this. We're not, even if I find that this happens, it doesn't mean the universities are necessarily to blame. It just means that there's correlation, right? There's a lot of things that could cause this, super spreader events, outbreaks in nursing homes and prisons and things like that can also have dramatic effects on new case counts. However, that correlation is interesting to note. And if there is no correlation, then universities can safely say, hey, we didn't do anything here wrong. We're fine, and we're okay with making that decision by ourselves. So here's my analysis where I broke things up. Again, Grant County seems to be doing much better than the rest of the state. So if I look at the differences in this data set and this one, it's not going to be anywhere near the 5% I need. In fact, it's almost 100%. That it's the other way. So I cannot reject the null hypothesis with Grant County, for example. But with Rowan County, I can, or Rowan County. Sorry. You know, there's a little bit, they start off, again, this little peak makes things start off kind of bad, but when you look how close they were here compared to the differences here, we end up with, by the way, I'm doing a bit of messy statistics here just to generate a t-statistic that I then compare. You have to there's a messy calculation of degrees of freedom and the standard error. And then from that statistic, though, then that distribution, student t distribution, you can generate a p-value. And so if the area under this, and so over here, the left-hand tail of this is less than 5%, then I'm able to reject the null hypothesis. And that's what happened in this case. I can reject the null hypothesis in the Rowan County case. Callaway, I can also do that. There's a noticeable rise in cases after Callaway, which has Murray, after Murray reopened. And then Madison is where EKU is. We saw this earlier. There's a huge spike in cases up there. that generates a very small p-score, so we can reject the null hypothesis there. In Warren, we started out much larger and then ended up kind of about the same. But we had a large difference over the rest of the states to begin with. So the question here is, did the reopening cause an even larger difference? And it did not. We can't reject the null hypothesis in this one because actually the means are about the same. And so this is almost, the p-value is almost 50%. Fayette definitely grew. Their difference is way larger. And so this generated a incredibly small p-value. So in this case, we could reject the null hypothesis. Franklin, where KSU is about the same. These differences were very close to each other. And so I can't reject it there. And Jefferson, which is likely to be the least affected because of the large population of Jefferson County total. If we look at the average difference over here and the average difference over there, we're not able to reject the null hypothesis. It's close. It's about 7.5%, 7.7%. But we can't draw that conclusion. So then the last step of this was to combine all the counties, the 8 counties that had public universities that I've just mentioned here, pool them together and compare them to the non-college counties. And so the conclusion here, when you look at the difference, it becomes pretty clear that the difference here is indeed greater than it was before these schools reopened. In fact, it generates a extremely small p-value. So we are able to reject the null hypothesis in this case. Again, it's not causality. I want to close with this. It doesn't mean that the universities are responsible for that. It just means that it happened, and we can show that correlation happened at a statistically significant level. All right. Following up on this, I may go back and pull this. It'll take a little time to do it, but pull the data for the rest of October. Be curious to see now the state is spiking. If there's still this correlation in college counties as compared to the rest of the state. So that would be interesting. And then also another suggestion would be to, and this would be extreme, but to take the college enrollments out of the non-college counties. That's pretty extreme. For example, here at WKU, we know that some of our students actually live in Warren County, right? And live here when school's not in session. But to give this as great a chance as possible at not rejecting the null hypothesis, we could act like all the students that go to a particular school came from a non-college county, and then remove those from the population of the non-college county. So I may do that too, just to see what effect it has on the p-value. To be honest, this is a really small p-value right here. So I don't know. We'll see. All right. Thanks, and I'll talk to you again.